My truck is a rusted Ford van packed with contractor bags, bleach, and a commercial wet vac. I run a small haul-out cleaning service for jobs nobody else wants. I don't advertise online, I get my business through word of mouth. Property managers call me when a tenant gets evicted and leaves a disaster behind. Real estate agents call me when a hoarder dies and the house needs to be gutted before it can be listed. You clean enough abandoned places and you stop judging what you find. People leave behind bizarre collections, 30 years of newspapers, hundreds of porcelain dolls. I just bag it, haul it to the dump, and collect my check. But I draw the line at biohazards. If I smell decay, I walk away. Last October, I got a call on a Friday afternoon. A man named Victor contacted me. His voice was smooth, highly professional. He said he was managing an estate closure for an uncle who had recently passed away out of state. He needed 3 adjacent storage units emptied out completely by Sunday morning so he could surrender the keys to the facility manager. He offered triple my usual rate, paid entirely in cash up front. When someone offers triple the rate for an emergency weekend haul out, it usually means the units are packed to the ceiling with piles of garbage. But my transmission was slipping, and I needed the cash to fix the van. So I agreed to take the job. The storage facility was an older, outdoor complex situated near an industrial train yard. 2 long rows of orange corrugated metal doors separated by cracked asphalt. It was completely deserted when I arrived on Saturday morning. Victor had texted me the gate code and the combination to the padlocks on units 40, 41, and 42. He promised to leave an envelope of cash taped to the inside of the first door. I punched the code into the gate. It rolled back slowly. I drove my van down the aisle and parked directly in front of the units. I grabbed my usual work gloves and a box cutter. I walked up to Unit 40, spun the dials on the combination lock, and pulled the metal roll-up door open. The door screamed on its tracks. Sunlight flooded the dusty concrete floor. I stopped short. The unit wasn't packed with junk at all. It was almost completely empty. Taped to the interior wall was a stuffed brown envelope. I pulled it open. $3,000 in crisp bills. I shoved the envelope into my pocket and surveyed the job. Sitting in the center of the unit were 3 heavy, dark wooden steamer trunks, old-school luggage reinforced with brass brackets. Against the back wall sat a single, rusted metal folding chair. That was it, just 3 trunks and a chair. I figured Victor's uncle was an antique dealer or just eccentric. I unlatched the first wooden trunk to see if the contents required heavy lifting. The brass clasp clicked open. I threw the lid back. The interior of the trunk was lined with dense white soundproof foam padding, the kind used in recording studios to deaden sound. Resting in the center of the foam was a single item, a child's pink backpack. It was covered in faded cartoon stickers. The zipper was broken. I stared at it. An antique dealer does not store a broken child's backpack in a soundproof trunk. A cold feeling crawled up the back of my neck. I shut the lid. I walked next door to Unit 41. I punched in the combination, unlocked the padlock, and threw the metal door upward. This unit smelled. It wasn't decay. It smelled overwhelmingly like industrial bleach and raw iron. The concrete floor in Unit 41 was completely covered by a massive, thick blue plastic tarp. The edges of the tarp were secured to the cinderblock walls with silver duct tape. Sitting in the middle of the tarp was a stainless steel medical examination table. It was the kind used in veterinary clinics. It had a grooved channel running along the edge to catch fluids. A deep, dark brown stain was baked into the drain hole at the foot of the table. My breath stalled in my throat. I stood perfectly still, listening to the distant rumble of the train yard. This wasn't a hoarder's stash. This was an active workspace. I pulled my flashlight from my belt. I stepped carefully onto the plastic tarp. I shined the beam onto the cinderblock wall behind the steel table. The wall was covered in deep, aggressive scratch marks. Hundreds of overlapping gouges dug directly into the concrete block. They weren't tool marks. They looked frantic. Uneven scratches dug deep into the concrete about 4 feet off the floor. I backed away. I didn't open Unit 42. I didn't want to know what was behind the third metal door. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the envelope of cash, and tossed it onto the examination table. I turned around and sprinted toward my van. As I threw myself into the driver's seat and slammed the door, a vehicle turned down the narrow aisle of the storage facility. It was a sleek black luxury SUV. It rolled to a stop, directly blocking the path of my rusted van. The driver's side window hummed down. A man in his early 40s was sitting behind the wheel. He wore a crisp, expensive sweater. He didn't look angry. That was the worst part. "It was Victor, you're leaving already," he called out. His voice was incredibly smooth, the exact same professional tone from the phone call. "Is there an issue with the rate?" I didn't answer him. The blood was roaring in my ears. He hadn't hired a cleaning service because an uncle died out of state. He hired me because he needed someone with a van to haul everything away before the police ever saw it. And now I'd seen too much. He put the SUV in park. He unbuckled his seatbelt. He started to open his door. I slammed my van into drive. I didn't try to navigate around his massive vehicle. I aimed my rusted steel bumper directly at the front quarter panel of his expensive SUV. I floored the accelerator. My rusty old work van slammed into the front of his vehicle with a violent, jarring crunch. The impact pushed his SUV sideways just enough to clear the narrow aisle. I scraped my side panel aggressively against his bumper, tearing metal off my door, and kept my foot pinned to the floor. I tore past him, rocketed through the open security gate, and merged wildly onto the busy industrial highway. I drove straight to the police station. I gave them the gate code, the unit numbers, and a description of the man in the SUV. The police raided the facility an hour later. Unit 40 was empty. Unit 41 was empty. By the time the police arrived, Victor had stripped the units clean, whatever he could in that short time, and disappeared. When they cut the lock off Unit 42, they found the reason he had hired me in the first place. The entire unit was packed ceiling high with contractor-grade garbage bags, dozens of them. Inside were hundreds of pieces of clothing. Women's clothing, men's clothing, children's jackets. Thousands of individual items, soaked in bleach, waiting to be driven to a municipal dump by a cleaner who didn't ask questions. The name he gave the facility was an alias. He paid the rental fees in cash via money orders, nothing that could be traced back to him. I ended up selling my van to a scrapyard. I work a quiet desk job in a logistics office now, because sometimes when somebody offers you too much money to clean up a mess, they're not paying for your labor. They're paying to make sure your fingerprints end up on it too. Childhood is a kind of hostage situation. Your reality is controlled by the adults who hold the keys. And if your parents trust someone, that person becomes untouchable. To an 8-year-old, an adult's word isn't something you argue with, it's something you survive. My parents were both high-level corporate attorneys. They worked 80-hour weeks and traveled constantly. To keep our massive, drafty house running, they hired a woman named Sylvia. Sylvia wasn't a nanny. She was a housekeeper who acted more like a warden for me and my younger brother, Henry. She arrived before we woke up and left after my parents came home. To my mother and father, Sylvia was a godsend. The house was spotless. The laundry was folded. Dinner was prepped in the oven. To Henry and me, Sylvia was a nightmare. She wasn't cartoonishly evil. She was methodical. Her cruelty was careful enough that nothing she did ever left visible proof. She hated noise. If Henry dropped a toy, she didn't scold him. She simply picked it up and threw it away. If I complained about being hungry too early, she would make me stand in the kitchen while vinegar burned my eyes from the sink. We tried to tell our parents. We complained at the dinner table. Sylvia threw away my action figure. Henry cried one evening, his voice shaking. My mother didn't even look up from her legal pad. "Henry, Sylvia told me you left your toys on the stairs again. She tripped over them. You need to respect her cleaning schedule." Sylvia had already laid the groundwork. Sylvia controlled the narrative. Whenever she broke a dish or scorched a shirt with the iron, she simply blamed us. She told my father that Henry and I were playing rough in the living room and shattered the vase. She told my mother I spilled juice on the silk blouse. Because my parents felt guilty for working so much, they overcompensated by enforcing strict discipline to ensure we weren't acting out. They believed her without question. Sylvia realized she had absolute immunity. That is when the stealing started. It started small: earrings, silverware, things that could easily be misplaced in a house that big. I was 10 years old when the situation escalated from psychological torment to genuine danger. It was a Tuesday during summer vacation. My parents were at the firm. Sylvia was supposed to be supervising us while cleaning the upper level. Henry was downstairs in the den watching television. I was in my bedroom, drawing in a notebook. I heard a sharp, cracking sound echo from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. I set my pencil down. I crept out of my room, walking softly on my socks. I peeked around the corner into my parents' room. Sylvia was standing by my father's heavy wooden dresser. She held a flathead screwdriver. She was prying at the brass lock on his top drawer, the drawer where he kept a locked cash box containing emergency funds and his expensive watch collection. She wrenched the screwdriver downward. The wood splintered with a loud snap, and the drawer popped open. This wasn't petty theft anymore. She was breaking into locked compartments. I didn't move fast enough. As the drawer slid open, she snapped her head up. She saw me standing in the hallway. There was no panic in her face. She simply set the screwdriver down on the dresser. She walked across the carpet, grabbed me firmly by the upper arm, and dragged me into my bedroom. Her grip was brutally tight, her nails digging into my skin. She pushed me onto the floor. "Your father is going to be so disappointed in you," she whispered. Her voice was terrifyingly calm. "Breaking into his dresser, stealing money for video games. What a terrible son you are." "I didn't do it," I yelled, tears of frustration spilling over. "I'm going to tell them you did it." She smiled. It was a cold, empty expression. "They won't believe you. They never believe you." She walked out, locking my bedroom door from the outside. I sat on the floor for 3 hours, waiting for my parents to come home. I braced myself for the yelling. I knew exactly how it would play out. She would show them the broken wood, shake her head sadly, and I would be grounded for the rest of the summer. At 6 o'clock, the front door opened. I heard my father's heavy footsteps on the stairs. But I didn't hear Sylvia's voice greeting him. Instead, I heard my father shout, "What the hell?" A moment later, my bedroom door swung open. My father stood there. He didn't look angry. He looked entirely bewildered. "Why is your door locked?" he asked. "Sylvia locked me in," I cried, scrambling to my feet. "She broke your dresser drawer with a screwdriver. She was stealing." My father didn't argue with me. He didn't defend her. He just turned around and ran back down the stairs. I followed him into the living room. My mother was standing by the front windows, holding her cell phone, staring blankly at the driveway. Sylvia's car was still parked outside, but Sylvia was nowhere to be found. My father rushed into his home office. The safe under his desk was wide open. It wasn't pried, it was unlocked perfectly. Sylvia hadn't just broken into the dresser, she had ransacked the house. The cash box was empty. My mother's jewelry box was completely cleaned out. The spare set of car keys hanging by the kitchen door was missing. The police arrived within 15 minutes. They swept the property. They found the broken dresser, the empty safe, and the missing jewelry cases dumped in the backyard bushes. They didn't find Sylvia. While the officers were taking a statement in the kitchen, a young patrol cop walked down from the second floor. He was carrying a small, black spiral notebook. "We found this in the trash can in the housekeeper's bathroom," the officer said, handing it to the lead detective. The detective flipped it open. It wasn't a cleaning schedule. It was a ledger. Sylvia had been maintaining a detailed, handwritten log of every single valuable item in the house. She documented the dates my parents traveled. She logged the combinations to the digital locks she had watched my father type in from the hallway. She also logged the exact alibis she planned to use against Henry and me. June 12th, blame the broken dining chair on the boy. June 18th, confiscate the dog's medication, tell the mother the kids fed it to him. She was carefully arranging situations that would make us look unstable and destructive, ensuring my parents viewed us as liabilities rather than reliable witnesses. But the final entry revealed the real reason her car hadn't left the driveway, and it wasn't what anyone expected. The police found her that night. She hadn't run far. She had packed my mother's jewelry into a duffel bag, grabbed the spare keys to my father's expensive sports car parked in the garage, and attempted to drive away before my parents got home. But the garage door motor had jammed. When she tried to manually lift the heavy wooden door, the tension spring snapped. The heavy timber crashed down, pinning her leg underneath it. She panicked. Instead of calling for help and exposing the theft, she dragged herself into the narrow crawl space behind the garage wall, hiding there with the stolen bag, hoping no one would find her before she escaped. My parents were devastated. The betrayal of trust completely shattered their worldview. They finally apologized to Henry and me. The strict discipline vanished, replaced by an overwhelming, suffocating guilt. Sylvia went to prison for grand larceny and child endangerment. I am 30 years old now. I live in an apartment. I refuse to hire a cleaning service. I do not care how messy the floors get. The idea of paying a stranger to walk through my home, quietly noticing everything about me when I'm not looking, makes my stomach turn. Children aren't liars. They are just the only ones paying attention when the adults stop looking. I've cleaned hundreds of empty houses. At least I thought they were empty. The worst mistake I ever made on the job was assuming a quiet house meant nobody was inside. I run an independent cleaning service out in the suburbs of Phoenix. My job is basically fixing the messes that rich people pretend they don't make. I usually work alone, but during the holidays, the schedule gets insane. Everybody wants their house spotless before their extended family arrives. I needed a second pair of hands to keep up, so I hired a girl named Sasha. Sasha was 19, sweet kid, but completely useless at cleaning. She moved like she was permanently exhausted and somehow missed obvious things: sticky coffee rings on counters, toothpaste dried in sinks, fingerprints on mirrors. Half my job was redoing her work after she wandered off to check her phone somewhere. I only kept her around because carrying an industrial vacuum up 2 flights of stairs alone destroys your back. It was an early December morning. We were booked for a deep clean at the Carver house. The Carvers lived in a massive, overly decorated 5-bedroom built at the end of a private drive. They were the annoying kind of clients, always leaving passive-aggressive notes about dust on the blinds, but leaving dirty laundry all over the master bathroom floor. Mr. Carver worked in corporate finance. He was supposedly on a business trip in Dallas. Mrs. Carver had already left for work. The driveway was totally empty. I let us in through the garage, keypad the Carvers gave me months earlier, and killed the alarm before it could start screaming. "All right," I told Sasha, handing her a plastic spray bottle of glass cleaner. "You take the entire upstairs, strip the beds, wipe the mirrors, and for the love of God, actually scrub the shower track in the guest bath this time. I'll handle the kitchen and the downstairs floors." Sasha gave a lazy sigh, grabbed a stack of yellow microfiber rags, and trudged heavily up the carpeted stairs. I turned my podcast on low, propped my phone on the island, and went to work on the stovetop grease. An hour passed. I finished the kitchen and started sweeping the dining room. The house was completely quiet. No vacuum, no footsteps, nothing. I wiped my hands on my jeans, already irritated. I figured Sasha was upstairs scrolling through TikTok instead of changing sheets. I walked up the main stairs. "Sasha," I called out, "you need to get the vacuum running. We only have this place for another hour before we have to hit the next house." No answer. I checked the master bedroom at the top of the landing. The bed was stripped. The dirty sheets were piled in a messy heap on the carpet, but Sasha wasn't in the room. Her supply caddy was sitting abandoned on the nightstand. I walked down the long hallway toward the guest rooms. "Sasha," I snapped, my patience totally gone. I stopped outside the last door on the left, the room Mrs. Carver used as a home office. Sasha stood just inside the doorway with her back to me. Her spray bottle sat on the floor near her shoes. Her arms hung stiff at her sides. She wasn't moving. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping into the room. She didn't turn around. Her shoulders were completely rigid. "Did you come up here?" she whispered. Her voice was shaking so badly the words barely came out. "No," I said, frowning. "I've been downstairs scrubbing the oven." Sasha slowly raised her hand. She pointed a trembling finger toward the massive walk-in closet on the far side of the office. "I was dusting the desk," Sasha stammered. The usual lazy, bored attitude was gone. She sounded genuinely terrified. I turned around to grab a fresh rag from my pile, and the closet door was open. "So they probably left it open this morning," I said, already walking toward the closet to shut it. "I shut it," Sasha insisted, her voice cracking, reaching out to grab the sleeve of my shirt. 10 minutes ago, I shut it because the mirror on the front of the door was glaring the sunlight right into my eyes. I pushed it until it clicked. When I turned my back to wipe the desk, somebody opened it. I stopped walking. I stared at the dark gap of the closet. The mirrored closet door was cracked open a few inches. I stood totally still and just listened to the house. The air conditioner was off. The street outside was quiet. It was faint, a soft, slow sound echoing out from the dark closet space. The sound of thick plastic shifting, like a heavy garbage bag being crushed under a shoe. Somebody was standing in the back corner of that closet, hiding behind Mrs. Carver's hanging winter coats, shifting their weight on the hardwood floor. My heart hammered so hard against my ribs it hurt, but I forced my face to stay completely blank. "Grab your bag," I ordered Sasha. I didn't yell, I didn't make a big scene. I kept my voice at a low, completely flat whisper. Sasha scooped up her caddy. We didn't run. If you run, you trigger a chase. We backed out of the office, walked quickly down the stairs, and stepped out through the mudroom. I hit the keypad to shut the garage door, got into my cleaning van, and drove 3 blocks away into a nearby gas station lot before I finally called 911. 2 cruisers went up to the Carver house to clear it. I sat in my van, gripping the steering wheel, watching Sasha cry in the passenger seat. I assumed the cops were going to find a desperate burglar who broke in looking for jewelry while the owners were gone. An hour later, my cell phone rang. It was the responding officer. He asked me to confirm that Mr. Carver was out of town in Dallas. I told him yes, that's exactly what the cleaning schedule note said. The cop went silent for a few seconds. He told me they cleared the house. They didn't find a burglar. They found Mr. Carver. He wasn't in Dallas. He was standing in the dark office closet. He was fully dressed in dark clothes, wearing rubber utility gloves. The plastic rustling sound we heard, he hadn't been standing on the hardwood floor. He had laid a massive sheet of thick construction tarp across the entire floor of the closet. He was holding a hammer. He had parked his car at a shopping center 3 miles away, walked through the woods behind the subdivision, snuck back into his own empty house, and waited in the dark room for his wife to come home for her usual lunch break. He had mapped out her entire routine perfectly, but he didn't know his wife had hired a new cleaning service for a deep clean on a Tuesday. He didn't know we were going to be in the house. He opened the closet door just enough to peek out to see who was vacuuming, and Sasha happened to turn around. Sasha didn't come back to work the next morning. I didn't blame her. On the other hand, I still scrub floors for a living, but my rules are entirely different now. I never wear earbuds while I vacuum. I prop the front door wide open while I work, and I never, ever assume a house is empty just because the driveway is clear. People hire me to wipe away the grime, so their homes look flawless from the outside, but no amount of bleach is ever going to scrub away the reality of what people are capable of doing to the people they claim to love right behind a closed bedroom door.